Welcome, Ms. Najma Minhas for Global Village Space. We're joining you after several weeks. Hopefully, we're trying to make it a bit more regular. But we're coming to you with a topic which we found personally quite interesting, which is Pakistan Civil Services. Moeed, you've been a former civil servant. It surprises me when I see in Pakistan the obsession that especially the youth has in joining and doing the civil service exam itself. Why does this exist in Pakistan?
It's a very interesting question, and I think you fail to understand this thing because you grew up in United Kingdom, right? But wherever there were the British colonies, there is a lot of prestige and a sense of power and a mystique that is attached to the civil services. We are more familiar with India and Pakistan and South Asia, but there have been British colonies elsewhere, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and so many other places. And wherever the British were, and they created a structure, a steel frame structure like civil services, it was considered very prestigious. It was considered, and the prestige was related to the sense of power and sharing. Because the principal power was being utilized, the principal power was being possessed and exercised by the British colonists themselves. And then they created an intermediary between themselves and the subjects. And initially, the Brown Sahibs, they created the Brown Sahibs. And for instance, the British were increasingly controlling India, Hindustan, after the Battle of Plassey in 1757. But they finally got to develop their own full control after 1857-58, when they had Punjab, they had North, and so then when they created the Indian Civil Service, the British Indian Civil Service, which was then called as the Imperial Services, the civil servants were only English, they were only British. And the exam was being held in England, in London, which continued till 1930. So the initial Indian people that appeared in the exam had to travel via a sea ship. Like one of the person was a cousin or a brother of Rabindranath Tagore. I think his name was Satyendra Tagore or something, who probably in 1864 was the first Indian who passed the exam, and he traveled through a steamship and landed in London. You used to go there, you used to prepare there, and then it was a matter of great prestige. But why the prestige was there? Why the mystique was there? Because after the English themselves, the people who were sharing the power with the Viceroy's team were the civil servants of the Indian Civil Service. And so the deputy commissioner, that was then called not the deputy commissioner, but the district commissioner. He was called the district commissioner. And he had the power, and he also controlled the military. So the Indian military cantonments were under the district commissioner. The military was not ruling. The military was not an elitist structure as such. It was the district coordinator or the district commissioner that was the important. So the sense of mystique, sharing of the power, and that has immortalize itself in the narrative, my great-grandfather, my father, my uncle, my son of this, blah, blah, blah. He was a civil servant, he was a deputy commissioner, he was a district
So the reason why today still people want to do it is because of that mystique and wanting to be part of that prestigious class. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. I mean, the principal reason, yes, the people will cite the reason that there's a lot of corruption and there's a lot of privilege and there are perks and there is abuse of power and so on. But I think the principal reason is the romance, is the idealism that, once you pass the exam, especially if you are among the top position holders, if you're among the top 20, 25, 30, 40, whatever, and for the greater length of the civil services, there were very few. When I took the exam in 1989-90 civil services exam, I think 900 or 890 people cleared the theory out of the 10,000 that appeared. And only 130 were finally 130 or 35 made to the academy. Now 300 or 250 or 300 make to the academy. So the prestige that you consider to be very talented, which is not true actually, which is actually not true at all in present day Pakistan. But that you are very capable, you're very talented, you competed, muqable ka imtihan.
Is it because, for example, the opportunities don't exist for the same youth? Because, for example, in the UK, US, nobody really wants to go and join the government service. It is not really seen as the option for the most intelligent, the brightest, the ones with the most ability in the country to go. I mean, it is a good job. It's considered to be a good job. It's considered to be a stable job with a stable income, stable pension. But really, the best and the brightest in those countries don't go to the civil service of the country.
You see, look, even in the current contemporary Pakistan for the past 20, 25 or 30 years, it is not necessarily the best and the brightest that are opting for civil services of Pakistan. If you look at the federal secretaries, I mean, the good example is if you look at the federal secretaries in Islamabad, their own sons and daughters are not sitting for the CSS exam. They're actually going to North America and they're going to United Kingdom. I think the best and the brightest from the best and the brightest and the most elitist families in this country go to top universities in the United States. They want to go to Harvard and Columbia. They want to go to Stanford and Yale and other places like UCLA and other universities, top tier. And then the second term option is still to go to United Kingdom, to Oxford and Cambridge and London School of Economics, University of London, King's College, Imperial College. So they are not coming for civil services. This is now a romance of the lower middle classes and the middle classes that still see it as a route of empowerment, and it is a route to join elitism in Pakistan. It is not the elite that are coming for the civil services.
Very interesting. So, I mean, since we're discussing the route, the reason why I was thinking about setting up this program, this issue, was that Shehzad Arbab, the Prime Minister's Special Assistant on
and the ex-Chief Secretary Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and the ex-Chief Secretary Azad Kashmir, and himself coming from a very important and prominent family, the man who wrote down the whole FATA law. This is how the FATA integration plan has been written by him.
But he announced, I think it was yesterday, the fact that there's going to be a screening test now on the civil service exam. Now, a lot of hoo-ha has been created. Of course, the children, the youth that want to attend and do the civil service exam say this is one more step.
No more children, they're all adults.
Sorry.
The children cannot take the CSS exam.
Well, the youth, I meant youth in their 20s, right. Basically. People in their 20s who are taking this exam have said this is one more way that they're curtailing the opportunities that were available to them. What are your thoughts on this screening?
No, this is not true at all. I think this is a very, it's a very victim kind of feeling, narrative or feeling that, they're curtailing the exam opportunity. I think the federal government, the government of Pakistan and the Federal Public Service Commission had been reflecting and mulling over of a screening test for the past number of years, perhaps as early as 2015 or 14. And in 2019, the cabinet almost came very close to keeping preliminary tests, but then they couldn't really develop a consensus. And now they have finally achieved a consensus in the federal cabinet that there should actually be a screening test. And the reasons for the screening test is this, that over the years, they have done a study and they have looked at the statistics that a very large number of people apply for the exam. They have the intention each year. For instance, in 2021, almost 40,000, 39,000 something, almost 40,000 people had initially applied or showed the intention, but only 17,000 something applied, finally sat for the exam. The rest of the 23,000 or whatever never sat for the exam. And out of the 17,000 plus, only 341 have been able to clear the written test, which includes and most of them fail in the English essay or the international relations or whatever. So the government is looking at this, that a very large number of wannabes that want to be in civil services decide 1 year ago, but they enter the process and then they don't simply have the courage to sit for the final exam. So it is causing a huge expense. I was looking somewhere that someone had done a study that or someone has basically, I think the advisor to the Punjab government, who himself has been an ex-civil servant who left the civil services, Hassan Khawa, probably said that government...
He wrote an article, I think.
He wrote an article in Next Tribune. He's a columnist as well. And Hassan has then been an ex-DMG sort of Pakistan Administrative Service officer. And he basically wrote an article that almost rupees 800 million, which if I am correct is about 80 crore.
Yes.
The government spends in this whole process about 20 months, 80 crore rupees, and governments want to reduce the expense. This is one thing.
And only 360 people come up towards the written test.
Yes, so, but it's not the expense only. The other thing is this, that the government sees that the government machinery and these people spend at least 20 months, they remain suspended. And I mean, people like me were lucky that passed the exam in the first attempt, but I have seen there are unfortunate souls in this country and even in India that keep on taking this kind of exam for 3 consecutive attempts, unless they have not been...
Apparently in India you're allowed to take
like imagine how many number of years they waste in this process, If every process is taking them 20 months, then they put together 60 months of their life, which is 5 years in this process in which they keep on thinking they will join the...
The fact that the country is just not providing enough other economic opportunities, and that is the reason why these people then spend 6 years or 3 years of their life until they reach the age of 30.
No, this is no. This can be true to some extent. I think most people,
You think they're just doing it for the romantic pleasure of joining the civil services?
To the extent this accusation is true, to the extent it's true that Pakistan, a country like Pakistan and even in India, is not offering economically meaningful job opportunities for the young people, and people do not have meaningful jobs which give them a sense of empowerment, a sense of sustained progress in life, and there are not many stable professional opportunities. To that extent is true. But the mystique and the romance of the civil services of Pakistan, and that too actually is a very small fraction of the civil services that truly represents the empowerment. You have to become an assistant commissioner, an assistant collector, a deputy commissioner, or an ASP police to begin with a sense of power, or income tax, assistant commissioner. If you're landing in military land and cantonments, if you're landing in audit and accounts, if you're landing in Ministry of Commerce, if you're landing in Ministry of Information, you don't really have that sense of empowerment. I mean, there is a huge difference between the sense of empowerment between Deputy Commissioner Lahore or Deputy Commissioner Larkana and someone who's sitting in audit and accounts. So there's a lot of...
So if we go to the what you classify as the mystique, but a lot of people say the elitism that the civil service embodies, one argument has been made that the way to reduce this and to make the civil servants much more accessible to the people is to make the whole exam in Urdu and to have the formal language of government in Urdu as well. I mean, do you agree with that? Would that make the civil service a bit more accessible to the people?
देखिए, इसका मैं उर्दू में भी अगर जवाब दूँ और इंग्लिश में भी जवाब दूँ, पहली बात तो है कि कोई सिविल सर्वेंट इस मुल्क में अंग्रेजी नहीं बोलता, ठीक है? And in fact, most civil servants are not very capable in speaking, they're not very good in speaking English, if you look at the great percentage of them. So official language तो इस मुल्क में अंग्रेजी है ही नहीं दफ्तरों के अंदर. इसकी ऑफिशियल जो रिटन कम्युनिकेशन लैंग्वेज है वो इंग्लिश में है. फॉर इंस्टेंस, जब आप कोर्ट्स में जाते हैं, इस कंट्री के हाई कोर्ट्स में आप जाते हैं, मोस्ट ऑफ द और सुप्रीम कोर्ट में आते हैं, येस, इन सुप्रीम कोर्ट दे स्टिल मेंटेन अ सर्टेन काइंड ऑफ डेकोरम of speaking in English, and the lawyers, the senior most lawyers and the judges in Supreme Court are more capable of expressing themselves in English. And the funny thing is this, the Supreme Court of Pakistan several years ago had passed a judgment, probably Iftikhar Chaudhry or someone else, maybe Khaja Sahab, I think Jawad Khaja, they said that in certain period of time after 24 months or 36 months or 3 years or 4 years, the language of communication and the language of, the correspondence and decision making should be in Urdu rather than English. But Supreme Court of Pakistan, even the Supreme Court of Pakistan has not been able to implement its own wisdom and judgment regarding the language. So there are certain structural and fundamental problems in terms of English and in terms of the Urdu, and that is almost a separate, discussion and a separate subject for which we should do a separate, sitting. कि क्यों उर्दू में आप इसको सबको ट्रांसलेट नहीं कर सकते पाकिस्तान की चीज़ों को, और इंडिया में भी वो नहीं कर सके, हिंदी में नहीं उसको ला सके. लेकिन ये तो आर्गुमेंट जो है, दिस पर्टिकुलर आर्गुमेंट दैट द सिविल सर्विस एग्जाम, सेंट्रल सुपीरियर सर्विसेज एग्जाम शुड बी in Urdu is a totally redundant argument. It doesn't even have a 0.1% sense in it, because every province and two dependent territories, provinces like Punjab, Sindh, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Balochistan, and dependent territories like Gilgit-Baltistan and Azad Kashmir have their own separate exams as well. तो अगर आपको उर्दू ही रखनी है और लोकल लैंग्वेजेस हैं, तो वहाँ वो तो लोकल लैंग्वेज भी रखी हुई है, उर्दू भी रखी हुई है. अब इफ़ यू हैव टू सेलेक्ट 200 or 250 people each year, men and women from this country, who provide the steel framework of the federal government of this country, and they ultimately go for very lucrative courses to United States, to UK, more than once and more than twice they travel abroad for 1 year, 6 months, 9 months in United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, United States for very lucrative courses of World Bank.
Okay, so you're saying they need to...
नहीं, एक पॉइंट मेरा कंप्लीट रह गया. देखिए, this is the class of administrators and managers which the federal government is training to interact with the global institutions. When you're a district management, Pakistan Administrative Service, look at foreign service. Foreign service में आ जाएंगे आप उर्दू लेकर, तो आपको तो और लैंग्वेजेस लेकर आना चाहिए, स्पेनिश लेकर आना चाहिए, फ्रेंच लेकर आना चाहिए. आप सिर्फ उर्दू के साथ आना चाह रहे हैं फॉरेन सर्विस के अंदर.
The foreign service as a distinct service in a moment. But the thing is that if you go to China, they speak Chinese. This distinct class of mandarins that you're referring to within Pakistan, they don't speak English in China. They don't speak English in Germany. They speak German. They speak French in France. So what makes Pakistan different, that they should not speak Urdu, but they should speak English?
For the greater majority of time period after the People's Republic of China came into existence in 1948-49, I think, to 49, till the time that China had started to become a global leader, most of their civil servants and most of the managerial class within China was not familiar with English at all. And they didn't have the class of the Chinese, which is now exercising or has started to exercise more and more influence inside China. Increasingly, this class of Chinese managers speaks English very fluently, is very well versed. I had the opportunity of twice interviewing the Chinese state managers who were dealing with finance, global finance, once for PTV and once otherwise. And I have found them much better than Pakistan's state managers. They were all trained in the United States and all that. So yes, once again, China is a huge country, a 1.4 billion population, and the great majority of the steel framework of the Chinese states, at 95%, would probably does not need, because they're dealing with the Chinese population. But what about the 4%, 3%, 4% of Chinese managers, and this number is going to increase, which is increasingly dealing with the world, and they're very well versed in English, and and China, I mean, I think till few years ago when I saw the figures, China and India were the largest number of students they were providing to American universities, and they were in hundreds and thousands, So China, and now increasingly as China becomes a global leader, you'll see the Chinese state managers, and look at this interesting thing that the ex-Chinese DCM, Li Jianchao, that was in Pakistan, he at the moment is the perhaps only real international standard spokesman they have cultivated with the Chinese foreign office. And he is annoying everybody in the world. He's literally kicking the ass of Washington. He's literally attacking United Kingdom. He's basically lashing out at India. In English. I mean, they're increasing, and they have created CGTN. And you look at the quality of the language and look at the quality of the anchorship in CGTN. So Chinese are awakening to the global leadership and challenge, and they will be increasingly speaking English. And this is all a Pakistani, once again, negative romance about Urdu. They think Urdu bolni hai.
Okay, so you have the Urdu section, and I think you've dealt with that.
Pakistanis should be fluent in both English and Urdu. What they increasingly require, and less are the regional languages of Punjabi, Pashto, but they have very strong feelings with Pashto and Punjabi and Balochi and Brohi and Sindhi, but use or utilization
in terms of a business language is probably
or 100 saal mein utilization nahi hogi.
Right. So so that's one thing. I really want to very quickly come to the foreign service element, which is our foreign service people, to what extent they can speak other languages, and how this is a big shortcoming that we face.
Abysmal failure of Pakistan Foreign Service, whereas someone was telling me, an American diplomat or British diplomat once said to me that for every dollar which Pakistan government or foreign office spends on its diplomats, they have done an amazingly good job in terms of intellectual orientation, in terms of serving the country's interest, and foreign service is extremely underfunded in case of Pakistan. But in terms of languages, Pakistan Foreign Office has failed miserably. I think they need to have a direct exam rather than if once
they should come in through the 360 cohorts.
No, not at all.
There needs to be a direct exam for the foreign service.
I think, like Britain and United States, every ministry and every department in Pakistan should have its own separate exams and interviews rather than having a common training program, and they can train them together. The common training.
So this whole concept of 70% of your students, CSS students, coming in and all sitting an IR exam as one of their papers doesn't make sense at all. I mean, if you're going to go into income tax, you should be sitting an economics exam, or you should be sitting an accounting exam. Or, I mean, what's the advantage of doing an international relations paper?
Yeah, it's a huge subject. You see, there are currently, when I took the CSS in 1990, there used to be 550 mandatory and compulsory marks. Now it is probably 600. And the 600 have 200. They have 100 marks of international relations, current affairs, English essay, Islamiyat, Pakistan studies, and so on. This is how they create the 600 marks compulsory. The international relations component of the compulsory subjects is not very substantive and is not very deep. This is what I believe.
That's probably why they all want to do it. It's the easiest thing.
No. You didn't understand what I mean. The kind and the substance of the international relations, which I would like to prescribe, and I would like the Foreign Service has to prescribe as a must subject, as a compulsory subject for all those who aspire to serve the Foreign Service of Pakistan, has to be far more difficult, substantive, and detailed as compared to the compulsory component of the international relations. The point is, anyone who wants to serve the steel framework of the state of Pakistan has to have some understanding of the international relations of the 19th century and 20th century as to how the world has been shaped. So the thousands of people that do take the exam and don't pass the exam still end up understanding the world for better, and they end up with provincial services and all that. But if to serve in the foreign service of Pakistan, people have to come up with a very fine-tuned understanding and interest and passion in the subject of international relationship and international economic order. It has been shaped by the end of 19th century, and especially after the Bretton Woods institutions after the end of the Second World War. They have to really come up with an understanding of what World Bank is, what IMF is, what is Asian Development Bank, what is DFID, what is the other things, and what is the FATF and all that. So this is not really happening. So you have the same exam, people come with the same exam, and then they make their options. And foreign service right now is third or fourth in the option list in the year 2020. But foreign service needs to have, if you really want to come to join foreign service, these are the one or two extra papers you must pass. And one of them has to be one optional language. Apart from English, they have to opt for either the Arabic, which is 25 countries that speak Arabic, or Spanish, which about 29 countries in the world speak Spanish. And I think almost, I'm not sure 29, but every Spanish, Arabic, and French. There are more than 20 countries which speak these languages.
And Chinese.
Chinese countries itne zyada nahi hai. There's only,
but still, it's
of course, it's very important language.
Most important partners now.
If I am someone who wants to join Pakistan Foreign Service, I must prepare for one language before actually entering the Foreign Service Academy, and then I should opt for a second.
So your recommendation is, especially for the Foreign Service, have this special track where there's a certain number of papers, one language in particular.
This exam is useless for Foreign Service.
Right. This exam is useless for Foreign Service, but I would say this exam is useless for the income tax people as well, and for the office management group. Maybe it's okay for a DMG type person, but then the question is, should we even have a position like the DMG type position? There is no sense.
This is a separate question. Look, first of all, I think this exam is now redundant in the year 2021 for any service in Pakistan.
So why is no change happening then? I mean, we hear commission after commission being set up for civil service reforms. People come, people retire and leave. Nothing happens.
This is actually a very sad state of affairs. This thing has been debated so many times.
And we focus all our energies on saying that the civil servants are elitists, but we don't make them specialists.
Yes, that's true. I mean, but you have combined so many questions together. First, look, every service needs a specialized exam and a specialized route to entry, just like Britain and United States have at this moment. They don't really have.
They don't have a civil service in general.
So none of the, except for French perhaps, who have some sort of elitist thing. But then once again, it's not like Pakistan. You see, every developed country, none of the developed countries has the kind of ministries Pakistan has, and none of them has a combined, except for India and Pakistan. So there are only about 6-7 countries, for instance, in the world that have Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and a few other countries that have a formal combined Ministry of Information, right? So the first job that needs to be abolished is the job of Fawad Chaudhry, our friend, right? Fawad Chaudhry, if he hears that, if this reaches out to him, this is a total redundant job. So every ministry have to have their own information and disinformation or communication wing capability, just like Britain and the United States have. But I think your argument on district management and Pakistan Administrative Service is also slightly misunderstood, in the sense this is a very important and broad-based service. It's basically a quasi-legal service. It combines high-skilled management along with legal understanding of the Constitution of Pakistan, Pakistan Penal Code, and Pakistan criminal procedure and whatever. So both police and district management, or the Pakistan Administrative Service, are legal services. And so when you want to come into the police, you should come with a background of law, criminology, and same for Pakistan district management, that you have to come. I mean, why are people being taken into the service without having an LLB degree? So I would, if it's up to me, I would recommend that everyone who intends to join the district management group or the police has to have a background in LLB, in a 3 years LLB program, with at least the level which is being offered by the external degree program of United Kingdom, which the University of London, or the kind of degree program, 5 years degree program, which is being offered by LUMS, but 5-year degree program is very long. There should be a standard 3 years degree program. Because when you're a police officer and when you are a district management officer, you're essentially a law officer, right? What is the point of being in police and district management without being law? And same for foreign service, same for commerce, same for audit and accounts. I mean, why are you in audit and accounts when you're not interested in audit and accounts? So this whole concept of this one single exam is dead, is redundant. And many months ago, I met an Indian aspirant of the Indian Civil Services, and she told me that in India they have radically reformed, changed, and they used to take probably 1,800 people into the exam, which has been reduced to 600, and they're bringing the rest through lateral entry.
Right.
So Pakistan also has to move in a big way towards lateral entry.
Okay, so you're saying yes to the screen testing.
Yes, of course, 100%.
And you're saying yes to having more information-based testing. And you're saying move towards the Indian system where we have fewer people but more specialized areas.
We don't need to necessarily follow India in that respect. I think we need to basically look at the developed world.
It's not just India, it's happening everywhere in the world.
It's like this.
Everywhere in the world, in the UK, for example, if you're going to join the UK Treasury, you sit the economics exams and you sit the specific exams for that area. It doesn't make sense for you to be in international relations. I mean, I hate to say that again, but no sense to being an English literature major, for example, and then going and joining the UK Treasury.
I need to say that in almost every aspect of our life, India becomes a precedent for us, and we're looking towards India, whether it's Bollywood and we want to follow their copies, we want to basically make films inspired by Bollywood, or it's the legal...
It's the Indian civilization, we both share it, so we will share many things.
Yeah, but also in the sense that they're moving faster in terms of modernity, because they had, even in the middle of 20th century, their system came out of the large urban centers which grew under the British. I mean, the cities like Calcutta,
their
Mumbai,
educational system is
so
probably ahead of us.
They're one step ahead of us and we follow them. But instead of following them, we need to basically look at what's happening in Britain, in United States, in France, in Germany, in other countries. What is Japan doing? Even Middle Eastern countries, are taking a lot of administrative steps. But there's one point I wanted to say. Totally slipped out of my mind.
Thank you so much for your time.